How many times have you decided to study, full of motivation to learn, open your material, and just a few minutes later found yourself holding your phone without even noticing, scrolling, answering messages, or thinking about something completely different? And when you finally realize it, time has slipped away, your concentration is gone, and you're left with that bitter feeling of frustration. Do you know why this happens? It's not because you lack discipline, and it's not because the subject is too difficult. The truth is, the world we live in today was designed to steal your attention. Phones, notifications, short videos, instant pleasures, every one of these things is training your brain, day after day, to chase quick rewards and run away from deep effort. And it's not just harming your studies, it's affecting your personal and professional life. Look around you. The modern world is a distraction machine. The phone buzzes every second. Notifications pull your focus. Pleasures are always one click away. We are surrounded by invisible obstacles that may seem harmless, but destroy your ability to concentrate. In ancient times, humanity's biggest challenges were war, hunger, disease. People had to fight to survive, endure the cold, and protect themselves from danger. Today, most of us don't face those threats daily. Our war has changed. Our battle is no longer against hunger or armed enemies. Our battle today is against social media that hijacks your attention, against the endless stream of stimuli that addict your mind, against the instant pleasures that kill your discipline. And you know what's even more dangerous? The modern world doesn't just rely on your natural weaknesses, it was designed to exploit them. The algorithm is working against you. It watches every click, every second you spend scrolling, every tiny pause of curiosity. And what does it do with that information? It feeds you exactly what it knows will hook you. It recommends what makes you procrastinate, what distracts you, what keeps you glued for hours without building anything meaningful inside of you. This is the silent war that most people never even notice. So how can you expect to have discipline to study, to work, to create, if every single click on what distracts you weakens your ability to stick with the things that require effort? The real enemy is not the complexity of what you want to learn. It's the simplicity of what pulls you away from it. The algorithm is like an equation engineered to exploit your curiosity against you. And the only way to win is to do the opposite, to consciously choose what you expose your mind to, the way a scientist chooses the data he allows into his experiment. Because distraction is one of the greatest battles of modern life. So how do you break this cycle? How do you escape this invisible trap that trains your mind every single day to get distracted? Listen carefully. The key is not to eliminate social media completely. The key is to redirect it. Because the same platform that weakens you today can also be used to strengthen you. Instead of clicking on everything that gives you cheap pleasure, start seeking content that elevates you, teaches you, and strengthens you. Bit by bit, the algorithm will adapt. It will begin recommending what feeds your mind instead of what drains your energy. Simple? Yes, but almost nobody has the discipline to do it. And here's the powerful truth. You don't need to abandon social media entirely. You need to transform it into a training ground. Instead of following pages that only distract you, follow mentors, follow thinkers, follow people who share ideas that expand your vision. Instead of consuming passively, turn every video into a starting point. Take notes, explain it out loud, apply it in practice. Don't fight against curiosity, direct it. The mind will always seek stimulation. Your power lies in choosing which kind. The secret is not to kill this instinct, but to guide it. If you direct your curiosity toward content that nourishes instead of drains you, you begin to train the algorithm to work for you, not against you. If you flip the switch and decide that every click is a vote for the future you want, the very system that holds you back today will start to push you forward. That is the difference between being a victim of the algorithm and using it as an ally in building your success. But listen closely. It's not enough to simply understand the problem. You need a system, because if you keep relying on willpower alone, you will lose. You need structure, and all of this begins with discipline. Discipline is the key. Imagine this. Every day you wake up and you don't depend on motivation. You know exactly what to do, how long to focus, and how to apply what you've learned. That is the power of a daily focus system. The first thing you need to understand is this: the human brain cannot maintain absolute focus for hours on end. That's an illusion. Forcing yourself beyond your natural limit only creates frustration. The secret is not quantity, it's quality. So remember this formula: 40 minutes of deep focus, 10 minutes of intentional rest. That's the ideal cycle. 40 minutes is long enough to dive into a subject without exhaustion. 10 minutes is the pause your mind needs to recharge before the next round. Push too far, and your mind scatters. Rest too long, and you lose your rhythm. But it's not just about setting time. It's about clearing the ground before you begin. Ask yourself, what is distracting me every day? It could be your phone, an open social media tab, or even a cluttered desk. Each of these is a silent thief of energy. And here's the truth: every time you let a distraction into your space, your mind learns that it doesn't have to respect focus. You are training yourself to be distracted. So, rule number 1, your phone stays out of the study environment, not in your pocket, not face down on the desk, out of the room. If you need it as a tool, use apps that block notifications and limit access to distractions. Rule number 2, a clean desk. Everything in your field of vision competes for attention. Keep only what you'll use for that block of study. This signals to your brain that there are no escape routes. Rule number 3, focus questions. Before starting each cycle, write on a sheet of paper, what exactly do I want to understand in this block? This eliminates vague studying, the kind where you turn pages aimlessly. Clarity is the trigger for focus. Now, during those 40 minutes, practice something almost nobody does: active attention. That means not just reading, but engaging with the material. Take notes, ask questions, create examples. And when your mind starts to wander, and it will, don't fight the thought. Simply jot it down on a piece of paper. Distraction, pay the bill, call someone back, and then return. That simple act frees your mind because it realizes it doesn't need to hold on to that thought. During those 10 minutes of rest, don't make the fatal mistake of opening social media. That destroys the cycle. Rest must be active. Stand up, drink some water, walk around, stretch. This sends oxygen to your brain and signals that you're taking care of your body while your mind organizes what it just absorbed. And here's a detail almost nobody talks about. It's not only about how long you focus, it's also about what you cut. If you're losing hours every day to the same kind of distraction, you need to realize that it's not just a pastime, it's an addiction. Pay attention to the patterns. Which app do you open most? At what time of day? And what emotion triggers the escape? Is it boredom? Anxiety? Fear of not understanding? When you identify the trigger, you can cut the problem at the root. And here's a truth that can change everything. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent. If you simply do 3 blocks of 40 minutes a day with proper breaks and strong boundaries against distractions, in 1 month you'll produce more than most people do in 6. Pay close attention to me now. Focus is not magic, it's engineering. It's the way you design your environment, your cycles, your habits, so that distraction doesn't even get a chance. If you're dominated by it today, it's not because you're weak, it's because you haven't built the right system yet. Build that system, and your mind will start to obey like a precise instrument, ready to take you to extraordinary results. But none of it matters if you don't have discipline. Knowing focus techniques, study cycles, or learning strategies means nothing without it. Focus is like a flame. You can light it today, but without discipline it will be gone tomorrow. Discipline is the daily fuel that keeps that flame alive until knowledge is finally turned into results. Discipline means doing what must be done even when you don't feel like it. It's sitting down to study when your mind craves distraction. It's completing the 40-minute block when everything inside you wants to quit. It's explaining out loud what you just learned even when nobody is there to listen. It's repeating until your mind understands that there's no negotiation. And here's the hard but liberating truth. Discipline is not prison, it's freedom. Because while most people live enslaved by distractions, impulses, and moods, the disciplined person is free. Free to choose what to learn. Free to build the future they want. Free from depending on luck or outside circumstances. Now imagine what happens when you bring the 2 pillars together. trained focus, and unshakable discipline. You don't just learn faster, you become someone who cannot be shaken, who doesn't sabotage themselves, who moves forward every single day despite criticism or difficulty. And it is exactly this consistency that the world rewards, with opportunities, with respect, with prosperity. In the end, it's not just about studying better. It's about building a mind so strong and so disciplined that no distraction can stop you. And when you reach that level, you'll realize something extraordinary. Success in any area of your life is no longer a matter of luck. It's only a matter of time. And the real power doesn't come from bursts of motivation, but from becoming methodical. The human mind responds to patterns, to repetition, to system. When you plan your study routine and decide exactly what you're going to do, you leave no space for excuses. You take away the burden of deciding and leave only the task of executing. And here's the key: start small. Don't try to become a genius in a single week. If today you can study for 15 minutes with full attention, start with 15. Tomorrow, push it to 20, then 30. The size of the step doesn't matter, the consistency does. What trains your mind is not the intensity of a single day, but the discipline of repeating every day until your mind learns to obey. Be methodical. Set the time, the place, the duration, and the specific goal. Don't just sit down to study anything. Write down: today I will understand this chapter, this concept, this technique. That creates a mental contract. And when you honor that contract, your mind begins to trust you. It realizes that when you say, "I will," you follow through. And that's when self-confidence is born. Imagine this. Within a few weeks, you won't even need to struggle so hard to concentrate. Your mind will enter study mode almost automatically because you've trained it. You've taught your brain that there is a specific time of day when there are no negotiations, no distractions, no excuses, only commitment. That is the invisible force that turns ordinary people into extraordinary ones. Commitment means honoring what you planned, even when you don't feel like it. And that's exactly what shapes your identity. Every time you complete a daily goal, no matter how small, you send a powerful message to yourself. I control my mind, not the other way around. That is true freedom. Not doing things only when you feel like it, but because you decided. And the most impressive part is the compound effect. Small blocks of study, repeated day after day, create an exponential growth curve. What once seemed impossible to learn begins to feel simple. What used to take great effort becomes natural, because the mind, when trained, learns to obey. So remember this: the secret is not short bursts of intensity, it's method. It's not starting huge, it's starting small and never failing. When you become methodical, when you create a clear routine and stick to it, you'll realize there's no limit to what you can learn. Success in any area of life becomes nothing more than an inevitable consequence. Now it's your turn to act. Write in the comments, "I have focus." That simple phrase will reprogram your mind to believe what you declare. And every time you repeat it, you strengthen your commitment to success. And remember, focus is the key, but positivity is the fuel. A positive mind finds solutions where others only see problems. Before you leave, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That simple action proves to yourself that you are committed to this transformation. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
June 1974. Richard Feynman stands at a podium facing Caltech's graduating class in their caps and gowns. These students have just completed degrees from one of America's most prestigious science institutions. They're expecting the usual commencement speech about reaching for the stars and changing the world. Instead, Feynman tells them that most of what passes for science, including research published in respected journals, taught in university courses, and funded by major institutions, is fundamentally worthless. He calls it cargo cult science. And then he explains why even they, despite years of rigorous training, are probably guilty of practicing it. This comes from Feynman's documented 1974 commencement address at the California Institute of Technology, later published as Cargo Cult Science, and preserved in the Caltech archives. The speech would become one of his most cited warnings about the corruption of scientific thinking. But the story starts much earlier, in the South Pacific during World War II. During the war, Allied forces built airstrips on remote islands across the Pacific, Cargo planes would land, bringing supplies, medicine, food, technology. The indigenous islanders watched these metal birds descend from the sky and unload treasures beyond imagination. They saw the patterns. Soldiers would sit in towers with headphones, speaking into devices. Men with paddles would wave their arms in specific sequences. Runways had to be cleared of debris, and then, reliably, the planes would come. After the war ended, the planes stopped coming. The soldiers left, the supplies disappeared. So the islanders, using pure logic, decided to bring the planes back. They cleared strips of land to create runways. They built control towers from bamboo. They carved headphones from wood and wore them while sitting in the towers. They fashioned antenna shapes from straw. Men stood on the runway waving palm fronds in the same patterns they'd seen the soldiers use. Every element was replicated with stunning attention to detail. The form was perfect. The planes never came. They had everything that looked like an airstrip, everything that appeared to be the conditions for cargo planes to land. But they were missing something fundamental, something invisible. They didn't understand radio waves or flight mechanics or military supply chains. They had copied the form without understanding the substance. To an outside observer, it looked exactly like an airport. To the planes that never came, it was meaningless. Feynman stood at that podium and told those graduating students they were doing the same thing. He wasn't talking about obvious pseudoscience or fringe conspiracy theories. He was talking about published research in academic journals, studies conducted by credentialed scientists at legitimate institutions, work that followed all the apparent rules of scientific methodology, papers that got cited in textbooks, and yet, Feynman argued, most of it shared the same fundamental flaw as those bamboo headphones. It looked like science without being science. Consider one of his examples. For years, researchers studied whether rats could learn to navigate mazes faster with each subsequent attempt. Hundreds of experiments were conducted, papers were published, debates raged in psychology journals. Different research groups claimed different results. Some found dramatic learning effects, others found none. The field churned out study after study, each following proper experimental protocols, each with control groups and statistical analysis. Everything appeared rigorous, but Feynman noticed something. When a researcher finally conducted an experiment accounting for whether the rats could actually hear or smell their way through the maze, not just see the visual cues everyone had been measuring, the learning effects vanished. For decades, researchers had been inadvertently allowing rats to use sensory information no one was controlling for. Every previous experiment, despite following the form of good science, had missed this fundamental variable. The papers weren't fraudulent. The researchers weren't stupid. They had the appearance of scientific rigor, but they lacked what Feynman called scientific integrity. This reveals something crucial about the difference between methodology and integrity. You can follow every rule, cite every source, use every statistical tool correctly, and still produce garbage if you're not honestly trying to disprove yourself. The cargo cult scientist runs the experiment. The real scientist tries to think of every reason the experiment might be fooling them. Feynman gave another example that hit closer to home for physicists. Robert Millikan's famous oil drop experiment measured the charge of an electron, fundamental work that won him the Nobel Prize in 1923. Millikan reported his value with high confidence. His published data showed beautiful consistency. But here's what Feynman discovered when he dug into the history. Millikan's first published value was slightly off. As subsequent physicists tried to replicate his work, they kept getting values slightly different from Millikan's. Each researcher would get a number, compare it to Millikan's prestigious result, assume their own methodology must be flawed, adjust their procedure, and eventually publish a value closer to Millikan's. The next researcher would do the same. For years, the scientific community slowly crept toward the correct value through this chain of partial self-deception. Each physicist thought they were being rigorous. Each followed proper experimental protocols. Each had good reasons to trust Millikan's earlier work. But collectively, they were practicing cargo cult science. They had the form of verification without the substance of genuine independent testing. They were unconsciously tuning their results to match expectations rather than measuring reality cleanly. Feynman emphasized this wasn't about dishonesty. Most cargo cult scientists are sincere. They believe they're doing real science. The problem runs deeper than fraud. It's about a type of self-deception so subtle you don't notice you're doing it. He described it this way: the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. That sentence from the 1974 address cuts to the heart of cargo cult thinking. Your own brain actively works against you seeing your mistakes. You notice evidence that confirms what you believe. You unconsciously discount evidence that contradicts it. You run the experiment until you get the result that seems reasonable, then stop. You interpret ambiguous data in the direction you expect, and every step feels like you're being objective. This wasn't just about scientific research, but about any field where intellectual honesty matters. Cargo cult thinking appears everywhere: in business, in education, in journalism, in policy making, in your own work. Whenever you're going through the motions of rigor without the substance of genuine truth-seeking, you're building a bamboo control tower. Back to that commencement address. Feynman told those graduates about scientific integrity, which he defined as bending over backwards to show how you might be wrong, not just following the rules, not just being thorough, but actively searching for the ways your own conclusion could be mistaken. He said scientists should give all the information that could call their results into question, not hide contrary evidence in footnotes, not emphasize data that supports their hypothesis while downplaying contradictions. Put the ammunition for your critics right in the abstract. He gave a specific instruction. If you're doing an experiment, you should report everything that you think might make it invalid, not only what you think is right about it. Most researchers do the opposite. They report what supports their conclusion and briefly acknowledge limitations only if forced to. They have reasons. They need publications to get tenure. They need funding. They want their ideas to be taken seriously. Every incentive pushes them toward emphasizing confirmatory evidence and minimizing doubt. The system rewards cargo cult science because cargo cult science produces cleaner narratives, more confident conclusions, and easier to publish papers. Real science is messy. It's full of uncertainties and contradictory data and results that don't make sense. Papers that honestly report all that messiness often look weaker than papers that smooth over the complications. So researchers learn to build bamboo control towers, studies that look rigorous but are actually exercises in selective presentation. But then Feynman went further. He told those graduates that they had a responsibility beyond their own research. They needed to refuse to participate in cargo cult science even when everyone around them accepted it, even when it cost them professionally. He said, "You will not only do no particular good, but if you have any reasons for a feeling of pride on the basis of your accomplishment, you will lose it." That's a devastating message for a commencement speech. You spent 4 years earning this degree, and now you're being told that simply following the norms of your field will make your work worthless and drain your accomplishment of meaning. But Feynman wasn't trying to discourage them. He was warning them about the specific trap that catches people who think they're too educated to fall for obvious nonsense. The cargo cult islanders can be forgiven. They had no framework for understanding radio communication or aerodynamics. They were doing their honest best with limited information. But a physicist who cherry-picks data, a researcher who stops investigating once they get the result they wanted, they know better. They have the tools to recognize their own self-deception. They just choose to ignore those tools because building a real control tower is harder than building one from bamboo. Consider how this applies today when you're evaluating expertise. Someone has a degree from a prestigious institution. They've published papers in respected journals. They use sophisticated technical language. They present data in compelling visualizations. They cite sources. Every marker of legitimate expertise is present. But are they practicing cargo cult expertise? Are they selectively presenting evidence that supports their preferred narrative while burying contradictions? Are they mistaking the appearance of rigor for actual rigor? The same principle applies today when you're doing your own knowledge work. You research a topic. You find sources that support your existing belief. You organize them into a coherent argument. You anticipate objections and prepare responses. You present your conclusion with confidence. You've done everything that looks like thorough analysis. But did you genuinely try to prove yourself wrong? Did you seek out the strongest counter-arguments? Or just the ones you could easily refute? Did you update your belief when you encountered contradictory evidence? Or did you explain away that evidence to preserve your original conclusion? Most people go through life building bamboo control towers without realizing it. They follow career advice that sounds sophisticated, but they never verify whether it actually produces results. They adopt productivity systems that feel rigorous, but never track whether their actual output improves. They learn frameworks and models and methodologies that give them the appearance of expertise without the substance of genuine understanding. They're not being dishonest. They genuinely believe they're being thorough, but they're fooling themselves. Feynman had seen this pattern throughout his career. During the Manhattan Project at Los Alamos, he watched brilliant scientists get so invested in their theoretical models that they ignored experimental data, contradicting their predictions. After the war, he saw academics build entire research programs around fashionable ideas that crumbled when subjected to genuine scrutiny. He noticed how institutions incentivized the appearance of productivity over actual discovery, how funding favored projects that promised clear outcomes over genuine exploration, how peer review rewarded papers that fit expected patterns over papers that challenge assumptions. And he recognized the trap catches everyone eventually, including him. He told a story about his own early research where he'd gotten excited about a result, only to realize later he'd been unconsciously interpreting ambiguous data in the direction he wanted. He hadn't committed fraud, he'd just been human. The experience taught him that intellectual integrity requires constant vigilance against your own motivated reasoning. This brings us to the deepest layer of what Feynman was warning about. Cargo cult science isn't just methodologically flawed research. It's the betrayal of science's fundamental purpose. Science exists to be wrong less often, not to be perfectly right, not to achieve absolute certainty, but to gradually, painfully, honestly reduce the ways we fool ourselves about reality. Every scientific practice, peer review, replication, controlled experiments, statistical analysis, exists as a defense against human self-deception. When you go through the motions of those practices without their spirit, you've kept the shell and killed the organism. You're waving palm fronds on a bamboo runway, wondering why truth won't land. Feynman ended his commencement address with something unexpected. He didn't give those graduates a rousing call to action or an inspirational message about changing the world. He told them they'd probably face a choice at some point in their careers. They could practice cargo cult science, publish regularly, get funding, build a respectable career, gain the respect of peers who are doing the same thing. Or they could practice real science, which might mean publishing less, struggling for funding, being seen as difficult or uncooperative, and possibly never achieving conventional success. He couldn't tell them which to choose. He could only explain what each path meant. 36 years before that speech, in 1938, those Pacific Islanders were still building their bamboo airports. They believed with complete sincerity that they were doing everything necessary to bring back the cargo. They'd be heartbroken to learn they were wasting their effort. But at least they didn't know better. They lacked the framework to understand their mistake. You don't have that excuse. You know the difference between going through the motions and genuinely trying to be less wrong. You know when you're selecting evidence to support your conclusion versus following evidence wherever it leads. You know when you're adopting the appearance of expertise versus building actual competence. You feel the difference, even if you don't admit it. The question Feynman left hanging in that speech hall was simple. Which runway are you building? The one where planes might actually land, even if it takes longer and looks less impressive. Or the bamboo version that photographs well but serves no real purpose except maintaining your illusions. Because here's what he understood that most people miss. The cargo cult version feels like it's working. You're busy. You're productive. You're following best practices. You're accumulating credentials and publications and recognition. The activity itself creates the illusion of progress. The planes never come, but you're so focused on waving the palm fronds that you don't notice. Real science, real expertise, real understanding, it often looks less impressive from the outside. It's slower. It's full of dead ends and mistakes and uncertainty. It requires saying, "I don't know," more often than feels comfortable. It means abandoning ideas you invested years in when the evidence contradicts them. It offers fewer guarantees and more humility. But it's the only kind that works when reality comes to evaluate your conclusions. The only kind that builds something lasting instead of decorative. The only kind that brings actual planes to actual runways instead of maintaining comfortable delusions about bamboo. Feynman gave them one last piece of advice before they walked across that stage to receive their diplomas. I'm talking about a specific extra type of integrity that is not lying, but bending over backwards to show how you're maybe wrong that you ought to have when acting as a scientist. That extra type of integrity. That's the piece missing from the bamboo control tower. That's what separates real understanding from its convincing imitation. And that's what he was challenging them, and challenging you to carry into whatever work matters to you. The planes still aren't coming to those bamboo runways. They never will. But somewhere, someone is building a real airstrip, with all the invisible complexity that requires. Where are you building yours?
Imagine for a moment that learning a language was like learning to take apart a radio, just without getting shocked. And imagine that instead of spending hours in painful classes trying to look smart, you only needed 15 minutes a day. This isn't some mystical promise from a spiritual guru with a relaxing voice and purple lights behind it. It's physics applied to your mind. Consistency plus understanding equals the miracle of the human brain, or as I like to call it, using your brain the way it was actually designed to be used, instead of treating it like a walking flash drive. Pay close attention now, because this matters. Most people try to learn a language by memorizing rules and word lists. That's like trying to learn how to swim by reading a book on the beach. You might look busy, you might even sweat, but once you're in the ocean, you sink like a very ambitious rock. The key isn't memorizing, it's understanding. The brain hates useless effort. It loves patterns, connections, and living context. So if you want to learn a language, the game is not repeating words like a proud little parrot. The game is creating meaning, even if at first it feels like someone threw random syllables at your face. Now you might be thinking, but I don't understand anything in the beginning. Great. Congratulations. You're alive, not an encyclopedia. Confusion isn't the enemy. It's the lobby of understanding. That's where you train your brain to say, relax, I'll figure this out. This is the fatal mistake most people make. They run away from confusion. But you should embrace confusion the way a scientist embraces a strange equation. Because the moment it starts making sense, your brain pops a bottle of champagne and goes, I knew I was brilliant. Learning a language isn't about talent. It's about building familiarity, listening to and reading the same short passage several times, letting your mind chew on it quietly, the same way it processes anything important. And here comes your first epiphany. Speaking is a consequence. It's not the start of the process. It's the bonus that comes when you're so soaked in the language that it slips out of your mouth without asking for permission. Now let's shape all this into a routine. A routine so simple that the only way to fail is not showing up for 15 minutes. And I know you can show up. Imagine opening a simple book in the language you want to learn. Nothing epic, nothing like starting Russian with Dostoevsky on day one, unless you enjoy emotional collapse served with a cup of tears. You pick a tiny passage, not a full chapter, not a 2-hour lesson, 30 seconds of text, maybe 1 minute of audio. You'll look at it, listen to it, and think, I didn't understand anything. Excellent. Your neurons just woke up. The brain hates the unknown, and that's exactly what forces it to learn. You read it once, slowly. Then you listen. Then you read again, and the words start to look a little familiar. Still can't speak? Perfect. Richard Feynman didn't know physics when he was born either, and that turned out fine. With each repetition, something magical starts happening. Loose pieces begin to organize themselves. A word here, a phrase there. The mind creates hooks. This is real learning, not memorizing, recognizing. When the brain recognizes, it keeps. Notice something. You're not memorizing, you're not suffering, you're not feeling stupid. You're exploring. Explorers don't recite lists of trees, they enter the forest. And now comes the point where most people quit. But I can't stand repeating the same thing over and over. If you think like this, congratulations, you've just described the exact reason you've never gotten great at anything before. Smart repetition is like watering a plant. You don't dump 10 liters of water at once and hope for the best. You water a little every day, 15 minutes. It's not about quantity, it's about continuity. Now let's get to the method. Exactly what to do in those 15 minutes. Before you even start the clock, one rule. Your material must have text plus audio. No audio only in the beginning unless you want to rely on luck and chaos. Now we start. Your actual daily ritual. And yes, ritual. If it were just a technique, everyone would use it. A ritual has presence, it has weight, it has that quiet sense of this matters. So do this with me now, mentally if you're on the bus, physically if you have enough dignity and privacy at the moment. Minute 1, brain priming. Don't pick up the material yet. Take 3 slow breaths. This isn't mysticism, it's neural signaling. You're telling your brain, stop, we're learning now. Without this, you study with the same focus as someone reading a medicine label after too much coffee. Let me ask you something. Have you noticed how much better your brain works when it knows where it's heading? That's the explorer mode. If you don't activate it, your brain stays in survival mode, and everything feels way harder than it should. Minutes 2 and 3, light exposure. Now yes, grab your tiny passage. 30 seconds of text or 1 minute of audio, nothing more. You're not here to prove intelligence, you're here to build controlled familiarity. Read without trying to understand everything. Look at it the way a scientist looks at a strange phenomenon, curious, not desperate, like someone who says, interesting, even when they have no idea what they're seeing. This is where 90% of people quit, because they want to understand before they look. But in the real world, understanding comes after looking, after repeating, after looking again. This is your advantage now. You know confusion is a doorway, not a failure. So read. No pressure, no translating yet, just exposure. 2 minutes and done. Yes, done. Want to continue? Great. Can't? No problem, because tomorrow you're back, and your brain will be waiting for you, and curious like a cat chasing a laser. From here on, we start building progressive comprehension, 1 step at a time. Mountains are for the ego. Staircases are for people who actually reach the top. Get ready. The next step is where your brain starts recognizing patterns almost without your permission. Now that you've looked without panicking, we go deeper. Minutes 4, 5, and 6. Brain-text synchronization. Read the same passage again. Yes, the same one. This time with the audio playing. Read and listen at the same time. Your brain will freak out a bit, like it's trying to watch a movie while solving an equation, but then it thinks, wait, I know this. I think I'm getting it. That tiny spark is the miracle. It's the moment when neurons whisper, connect, yes, almost. You're not trying to speak yet. You're not memorizing it. You're not torturing yourself with grammar. You're absorbing rhythm, tone, sound, movement. Think of it like tuning an instrument before playing, or listening to music before trying to sing. And yes, I know, your ego wants to impress the world and start forming sentences right now, but your brain is, and saying, relax. Let me teach you the difference between sound and noise first. You're training perception. Speaking comes later. Understanding comes now. By the end of 6 minutes, you've seen the text twice, heard it twice, and your brain is doing its secret magic, turning chaos into meaning. And here's what you're avoiding: the fatal trap of language learning, thinking that learning is collecting words. Learning is organizing meaning. Most people try to store loose words like someone trying to store dust in a drawer. You're building structure. Congratulations. You're learning like a scientist, not a parrot. From here, we'll reinforce that structure the way you build a rocket, in layers. Now we reach the point where your brain truly starts working on its own. You've read the text, you've heard it with the text. Now let's test your mind without training wheels. Minutes 7, 8, 9, and 10. Just listening. No looking at the text, no reading, no panic, just listen. Now yes, I know, your mind is about to tell you that you're terrible at this, that you didn't understand anything, and that maybe learning Esperanto would have been easier than this. Ignore that emotional child inside you. It's just confused by the effort. Do this with me right now, mentally. Close your eyes for 2 seconds and imagine you're listening to someone speak in another language. But now, instead of trying to translate everything like a panicked lunatic, you simply listen. Notice the rhythm, the cadence, the melody of the sentences, the way words begin and end. If you try to translate everything, you fail and you suffer. But if you observe it like a scientist watching atoms dance, or like someone listening to gossip with zero context but full curiosity, your brain starts to deduce meaning. That's how babies learn. Have you ever seen a baby say, "Father, please present me the full verb conjugation chart"? Of course not. They observe, imitate, throw sounds into the air, and let chaos work in their favor. Now actually do this. Take a phrase in another language that you roughly understand. Repeat it in your mind without translating it word for word. Just let the phrase exist. That's your training for today. Simple, direct, ridiculously effective. 4 minutes of this, and your mind becomes a pattern-detecting machine. The brain learns the same way muscles do, under light, steady tension, never under torture. Now comes the part that makes every adult nervous and every child delighted. Imitating sounds. Minutes 11, 12, and 13. Repetition with intention, not perfection. But hold on. No inventing sentences. No trying to be Shakespeare in Mandarin. You're only going to repeat the phrases or words you heard, nothing more. And before your brain tries to escape through the nearest window, think about this. You've imitated accents before, just for fun. You've repeated songs without knowing what they meant. You've memorized movie lines, which means you're already good at this. You just forgot. So let's run a quick experiment. Say this quietly or mentally if you're in public and don't want to look like a malfunctioning Russian spy. Repetition isn't stupidity. It's neural engineering. Good. Now another. Pick a simple word in another language you know. Merci, hola, grazie, hello, konnichiwa. And say it 3 times with intentional rhythm. Feel that shift? Your brain starts to play. And when the mind plays, it learns faster. Do you learn better when you're tense or when you're curious and relaxed? Exactly. So right now, choose any word in the language you're learning and say it 3 times slowly and once quickly. Do it now. Yes, now, not later. Felt that? Congratulations. That was a real training. Don't try to sound native yet. Try to sound like someone who isn't afraid to learn. Fluency doesn't come to perfectionists. It comes to persistent, awkward people who keep showing up. Now for the final 2 minutes, the gold that turns this technique into a powerful process. Minutes 14 and 15, minimal explanation plus tracking. You'll do 2 things. 1, summarize what you understood in 1 sentence. Doesn't matter how simple it is. It can be, I understood 1 word. I caught the rhythm. I noticed a repeated verb form. I didn't understand anything, but my brain recognized sounds. Any of these is a neural victory, because whoever explains understands, and whoever tries to explain and fails discovers exactly what to improve next. That is literally the essence of the Feynman technique. Now the second part, 2, mark your progress. A slash, a check mark, a simple done. No complex journals, no spreadsheets, just a 1 in your physical or mental calendar. You want the secret of progress? The brain loves endings. And when you close a cycle, it rewards you and says, let's do it again tomorrow. Now imagine this, 30 days of this, 15 minutes a day. Nothing heroic, nothing dramatic, just behavioral science plus human curiosity. You don't magically become fluent. You become inevitable. And inevitably, one day, you'll open a video in that language, smile and think, I understood this without even trying. On that day, you'll remember this moment, this first training, this first step, and you'll realize that learning a language was never about talent. It was always about method and present. Now tell me, are you ready to come back tomorrow and repeat? Because your brain only needs you to say yes once a day. And today, you already did. Now drop a simple comment below to lock in today's learning. I train my mind every day. And if you want to go further, tell me, which language are you going to train with this method? Because what you do in the next 15 minutes can shape who you become in the next 15 years. Leave a like, and if you're new here, hit subscribe. There are more videos like this about learning faster, thinking better, and building a mind that works like a living laboratory. And if you like using your brain for something better than memorizing phrases, welcome to the right place. Have you ever wondered why children learn a language so quickly? It's not because they're smarter than you. It's because they learn in a completely different way. Think about it with me. What comes to your mind when I say the word apple? You probably picture that red fruit, right? But then, why is it that when you're learning a new language, and you hear in Spanish manzana, you think of the English translation apple instead of seeing the image of the fruit? A child doesn't try to memorize endless lists of words, nor do they translate every term back into their native language. They do something far more powerful. They link the word to the real image of the object, to a living experience. When a child hears perro, they don't think of the English translation dog. They see the animal running. They hear the bark. They feel the joy. That's how the brain connects directly to reality. That's why learning happens naturally, Now imagine you're learning a new word in French, Spanish, or Italian. Most people immediately reach for the translation into their first language. You hear macchina in Italian, and instead of seeing the image of a real car in your mind, you think of the English translation, car. And that's the mistake. When you process a new word by translating it into your native language, your brain doesn't truly learn it. The most powerful way to learn a new language quickly and effectively is to bind words to images. For example, when you hear car, immediately visualize a car, see the wheels turning, feel the engine, picture yourself driving down the road, rather than translating it into Spanish. Pay very close attention now, because what I'm about to share with you has the power to accelerate your ability to learn any language at a speed that might seem impossible. Here's the truth. The secret isn't in repeating words mechanically or memorizing endless lists. The secret lies in how you direct your mind. When all you do is read, listen, or try to memorize, your brain can trick you. It doesn't push itself. It prefers to spend as little energy as possible, convincing you that you've understood, when in reality, you haven't. That's where so many people go wrong. But when you try to explain something, there's no way to hide from the truth. If you don't truly understand it, you'll stumble. And that stumbling is pure gold. That's the moment your mind shows you exactly where the gaps are. Never settle for memorization alone. Aim to understand. And once you understand, explain it. That's the key almost no one applies, and yet it can multiply the speed of your learning by 27 times. Because the moment you try to explain something out loud, something extraordinary happens in your brain. The connections that were once scattered begin to organize. The simple act of teaching forces your mind to create order out of chaos. It's as if you had pieces of a puzzle scattered across a table, and suddenly you're compelled to fit them together so the picture finally makes sense. That's why you should always explain what you just learned, even if you haven't mastered it yet. Teach it to yourself out loud. Repeat it as if you were giving a class. And if there's someone nearby, dare to explain it to them too. Don't worry if it feels strange, because it's in that effort to organize ideas that your mind locks in the knowledge. Don't be afraid of sounding silly. Don't worry if your explanation comes out incomplete, awkward, or full of holes. The very act of turning thought into words makes your brain work on a different level. And in trying to explain it correctly, your brain automatically pushes itself to learn. That's when you leave the passive mode and step into active learning. And active learning is what separates the people who spend years struggling from the ones who learn in a matter of months. Each time you explain, even to yourself in the mirror, you're reinforcing confidence. You're telling your mind, I can master this. And that self-confidence is fuel. It pushes you to keep going, not to quit, to review until everything is crystal clear. So engrave this law deep inside you. Those who explain, learn. Those who teach, retain. Those who organize what they know, achieve mastery. This is the force that turns an ordinary student into someone who can absorb a language 27 times faster. Now understand something crucial. Without this, you'll never be able to learn another language. Concentration. Concentration is everything. Many people study for hours and convince themselves they're making progress, but in reality, they're just wasting time. Studying for hours without focus is wasteful. But 30 minutes of absolute attention? That's pure fire. Here's the key. Use short, focused study sessions with precise breaks. Structure your learning into blocks. For example, if today you want to study for 2 hours, divide it into 4 sessions of 30 minutes each with a 10-minute break between them. But during each of those 30 minutes, cut off every distraction. Silence your phone, close the tabs, and give your full attention to that moment. Think about it. How many times have you tried to study, but your phone buzzed, someone called you, or your mind simply wandered away? That isn't studying, it's self-deception. Distraction is the silent thief that steals years of your life. Every second you allow yourself to be interrupted is a piece of energy stolen from your dream. Focus, and you'll multiply the value of every minute tenfold. And here's another secret. It's not about studying more. It's about studying better. Organize your priorities. If you only have 1 hour a day, don't waste it on irrelevant details. Always ask yourself, what's the single most important thing that will push me forward right now? That answer becomes your compass. By concentrating on the essential, you cut out the excess, remove the fat, and go straight to the muscle of learning. Understand this. Concentration is not a gift only a few people are born with. It's a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. At first, maybe you'll manage only 5 minutes of real focus, then 10, 20, 40. Eventually, you'll reach a point where immersing yourself in the new language feels so natural that you forget the world around you. That is the state where learning explodes, where every minute is worth hours. And no matter your age, your brain is always learning. That's why the very first commandment is this. How should you learn? Never by memorizing. Most people fail because they try to stack words in their head, as if the mind were just a storage box. But the brain wasn't designed to memorize. It was designed to connect, to visualize, to create meaning. That's why every time you learn a new word, don't translate it. When you learn a new word, picture the image of the object itself. If you learn the word coche in Spanish, don't think of the English translation. See the image of a car. Watch the wheels turning. Feel the engine. Imagine yourself driving down the road. That scene ties the word directly to experience, to the real world, without passing through the barrier of translation. In this way, your mind begins to understand the language the same way a child understands the world, naturally, vividly, without intermediaries. Now apply this to everything you learn. If you hear the word manzana in Spanish, don't think of the translation apple. Picture the red fruit shining under the light. Smell its freshness. Feel the crisp texture as you take the first bite. If you learn perro, don't translate it as dog. See the animal running through the park, wagging its tail, barking with joy. That's exactly why children learn a language 27 times faster. They absorb the word together with the image of the object, with the direct experience. Adults, on the other hand, have been conditioned to translate, and that extra step is like carrying a heavy backpack with every word you try to learn. It's slow, exhausting, and ineffective. The secret to speeding up your learning is simple. Go back to learning the way a child does. Connect every word to an image, to a scene, to a sensation. When you learn house, don't think casa in your mind. Picture a door opening, the smell of food coming from the kitchen, the feeling of being inside a home. And when you learn casa in Spanish, don't think house. Picture that same door opening, the aroma of a warm meal, the comfort of family inside. This is the central point of the method. Bring the language into your reality. Turn words into experiences and experiences into memory. The closer the scene you create is to something real, the faster your brain locks it in. So never forget, you can learn any language 27 times faster. No matter your age, no matter how difficult it seems. All you need to do is abandon the old crutch of translation and embrace the power of images, experiences, and explanation. That's how you unlock the potential that has always been inside you. Now understand this. The secret isn't to study for hours and hours without stopping. The brain doesn't learn that way. What really works is to divide your study time into 30-minute blocks of total focus, followed by 10 minutes of rest. In those 30 minutes, shut everything else off and immerse yourself in the language as if nothing else exists. That pause is not wasted time. It's what consolidates your memory and makes the learning stick. But remember, never try to memorize. If you hear carro, don't think car. See the car. Feel the steering wheel. Imagine yourself driving. And when you finish your study session, explain out loud what you've just learned. It doesn't matter if it feels strange. By teaching, you force your mind to organize what it knows, and that's when learning multiplies. Short study blocks, imagining instead of translating, and explaining out loud. This is the formula for learning any language at an astonishing speed. Now I want you to do something transformative. Write in the comments below the very first word or phrase you will practice today using this method of images without translation. Put it in writing because when you commit, your mind takes it seriously. And if this content made sense to you, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because here you'll learn the way few people actually teach. Remember, focus is power, and whoever masters their own mind masters any language and any destiny.